At 0430 hours local time, the first Ukrainian AN-196 Ludi drone shot off its hidden launcher near Sunumy, with another departing every 20 seconds in sequence. Simultaneously, across 3 additional firing points, 340 more unmanned aircraft ascended into the night sky, forming the largest synchronized drone swarm ever attempted in warfare. Up to this stage, the operation had unfolded perfectly, yet within minutes, the circumstances would shift drastically. Russian long-range detection systems had already spotted the enormous launch wave, and 4 Iskandar missiles were tearing toward the drone sites at nearly Mach 6. Carrying 700-kilogram warheads and requiring just 11 minutes to reach their marks, the Ukrainian crews were left with only seconds to send up the remaining aircraft before their positions were annihilated. The foresight of dividing the armada into 4 separate elements was about to prove decisive. At 0600 hours, the northern detachment crossed into Russian territory near Sutsa, diving down to 500 meters. This contingent of 95 drones, launched from Sunumy, faced the most demanding leg of the mission, steering northward to skirt the S-400 systems shielding Kursk. Onboard Skynode S processors, the artificial intelligence controlling each vehicle, quickly sensed the telltale signal from a 92 N6E gravestone radar, Russia's premier engagement sensor, capable of tracking aircraft over 400 kilometers. Yet the AN-196's lightweight carbon fiber frame gave it a radar profile scarcely larger than a bird in flight, effectively vanishing against systems tuned to pursue metal aircraft. Russian crews struggled to isolate real tracks from environmental noise as the drones skimmed low across ridges, their AI constantly matching terrain features to satellite maps and weaving between power lines to stay masked. The S-400 battery unleashed 2 interceptors at phantom echoes before realizing the deception. By 0608, the northern formation had slipped free of its danger zone. Losses were limited to a dozen units, all downed by navigation failures in rough country rather than enemy action. Roughly 100 kilometers farther south, the force launched from Fultava entered an entirely different contest. At 0610, Russian electronic warfare brigades blanketed a 200-kilometer sector with intense GPS jamming, blasting 500-watt signals across every navigation band. For conventional drones, this would have been insurmountable. Instead, the lead Skynode S seamlessly shifted to visual guidance, its cameras locking onto the M4 highway below and cross-checking its curves against onboard imagery. The 85 followers streamed behind, each conducting thousands of computations per second, tracing highways and railway lines as makeshift beacons. By the time they exited the jamming zone, only 8 aircraft had been lost, and those solely from mechanical breakdowns caused by the compressed launch cycle. Yet these difficulties were modest compared to the Eastern Group's ordeal. At 0615, 4 Russian Su-35 fighters scrambled from Vard Air Base, each carrying a dozen R-77-1 missiles dedicated to drone interception. Their leader divided the unit, one pair heading north, the other sweeping south. But the Urbis-E radar, optimized for fighter-sized targets, struggled to acquire the tiny machines skimming barely 200 meters over farmland. One pilot descended to 1,000 meters, risking ground fire to catch them from below. His radar at last caught a cluster, and the first missile obliterated a drone in a brief fireball. The exchange, however, revealed a brutal cost imbalance. Each R-77-1 cost roughly 25 million rubles against the drone's 200,000 ruble price tag. By the time fuel reserves forced their withdrawal, the fighters had spent 32 missiles to destroy just 15 drones, an exchange that drained Russia's advantage. The Eastern Formation pressed forward with 65 remaining units. At 0622 hours, the Decoy contingent carried out its deliberate sacrifice. These 80 retrofitted commercial drones, never intended to reach Cheboksary, suddenly climbed to 5,000 meters while activating radar amplifiers. On Russian scopes, they now resembled a salvo of high-value cruise missiles streaking toward Moscow. Across the network, radar crews reported multiple missile vectors inbound. Every interceptor was ordered to respond. 6 additional Su-35 fighters scrambled from Lipetsk as more than 300 surface batteries lit up their targeting radars. For a brief but critical 8 minutes, the entirety of Russia's integrated defense grid was concentrated on the decoys. By 0630, the diversion had ended. All 80 had been destroyed, yet their mission was a success. They had tied down 12 fighters and absorbed over 100 surface-to-air missiles. As wreckage fell across western Russia, the genuine assault pressed on unobserved. At 0725, just 180 kilometers from Cheboksary, the surviving forces united. The northern detachment's 83 drones merged with the southern element's 78 and the eastern wing's 65, forming a strike swarm of 226. Although 115 aircraft had been lost along the journey, those remaining were sufficient for the objective. In little more than an hour, Russia's most critical weapons complex would face their fury. At 0830, the vanguard of 40 drones crested the final ridgeline before Cheboksary, instantly activating every defense radar in the region. Behind them, 4 more waves, totaling 186 drones, advanced at 90-second intervals. The 6 Pantsir S-1 batteries guarding the installation were confronted with an impossible problem: 226 incoming targets against just 72 ready missiles and limited resupply. The 1 RS-2 search radar howled with warnings, symbols multiplying on operators' screens faster than they could track. Each Pantsir could engage only 4 threats at once, but 40 drones were surging in from a single direction. The operator fired 2 57E6 interceptors at the nearest group, already aware the arithmetic doomed him. At 0830 sharp, the first wave employed perfect swarm doctrine. As missiles streaked closer, clusters of 4 drones suddenly split in different vectors, ascending, diving, banking left, and cutting right, forcing each interceptor to choose one path. The Skynode S processors relayed encrypted burst signals, coordinating evasions. When a missile detonated near one target, the others surged through the brief opening, exploiting gaps the system could not cover. On the eastern flank, another Pantsir confronted the second wave of 45 drones moving in layered formation, 20 at 500 meters and 25 hugging the terrain at just 50. The operator faced a brutal dilemma: strike the high group his radar tracked cleanly, or the low flyers that could appear over obstacles without warning. He committed against the higher set, launching 4 interceptors. As those climbed, the low-altitude craft accelerated toward the complex. Meanwhile, the remaining swarms cleverly exploited the thick contrails and white smoke left by previous launches. Flying along the missile trails, they used the radiant heat to confuse infrared seekers, the smoke plumes to obscure visual tracking, and the disturbed air to blend into radar clutter. To Russian eyes on the ground, systems appeared to be functioning normally, yet the attackers were bending the defenses to their will, using the Pantsir's own exhaust as camouflage. By 0831, each battery's 2 A38M twin 30mm autocannons joined in, spewing tracer streams that crisscrossed the sky. But the drones slipped through as if water flowing through a sieve. The third assault wave, 50 strong, adapted further. They advanced in a loose, shifting cloud, constantly changing height and speed. Whenever tracers converged on one section, others surged forward. When a turret slewed to cover fresh contacts, the suppressed drones resumed their push. At 0832, the concealed third Pantsir revealed itself, loosing 6 missiles in unison at the oncoming fourth wave. Ukrainian planners had predicted hidden defenses, estimating between 5 and 7 batteries given the site's importance. This group of 51 drones countered immediately, deploying their own synchronized countermeasures. The missile seekers, engineered to home in on single large aircraft, faltered against swarms of tiny drones performing identical maneuvers within a haze of radar echoes. By 0832, the situation was grim for the defenders. The 6 Pantsir batteries had already fired 38 interceptors, achieving 31 confirmed kills. An 82% strike rate, remarkable against a standard raid, should have ended any conventional attack. Yet 195 drones still flew unharmed. Now inside the missile system's minimum engagement envelope, crews shifted to autocannons. But the limitation was immediate. Each unit could engage only 1 target at a time with guns. 6 targets suppressed meant nearly 190 continued on, untouched. At their closing speed, there was no chance for repeat firing solutions. The essence of the swarm became clear at 0833, shared intelligence. Rather than uncoordinated strikes, the Skynode processors orchestrated packets of 8 to 10 drones to converge on the same objective. Even with attrition, enough survivors would strike to guarantee destruction. Building 2, the critical KMDA antenna assembly, faced 15 drones approaching from multiple headings. Even if the closest Pantsir eliminated 5, 10 more would hit. 12 others swarmed Building 3's auxiliary facilities, while 20 zeroed in on the primary production hall. This was not indiscriminate chaos. It was calculated demolition. Ukrainian programmers had embedded adaptive routines into the Skynode-S cores. As drones observed which routes succeeded, they uploaded the data to trailing waves. By 0834, the swarm had cataloged every Pantsir's firing arc, reload interval, and traverse blind spot. Late arrivals adjusted their flight paths accordingly, diving through gaps where overlapping fire should have been present but was not. In the final 60 seconds, Russia's defense grid unraveled completely. Operators trained to pace their shots against bombers or cruise missiles suddenly found themselves in a close-quarters duel with a storm of wasps. Ammunition vanished at alarming speed. Each gun mount carried only 700 rounds per barrel, barely 42 seconds of sustained bursts. As one system after another ran empty, larger packets of drones slipped through unhindered. By 0834, the defenders could only watch as over 120 unmanned craft simultaneously began terminal dives. The real devastation followed faster than anyone expected. At 0835, sharp 28 drones slammed into their marks within a catastrophic 15-second span. Buildings 2, 3, and 4 were consumed in eruptions of dust and fire, reinforced concrete erased in expanding shockwaves. The perfectly synchronized detonations gave emergency crews no time to react. 5 separate blazes ignited before fire engines could even roll. The next strike wave, 35 strong, focused on infrastructure. The electrical substation blew apart in a spray of sparks, while sequential explosions leveled pumping stations, halting all firefighting capacity. Contingency systems collapsed in a chain. Backup generators silenced, communications blacked out, and lighting gone in moments. At 0836, chemical storage areas turned into amplifiers of destruction. Fused warheads punched into tanks, then detonated, mixing volatile compounds into flaming rivers of toxic sludge. The pressurized clean rooms ruptured violently. Gases such as nitrogen, argon, and hydrogen ignited, transforming precision laboratories into massive fuel air charges. By 0837, the last wave required no fine targeting. Below them, dozens of separate infernos had merged into one giant firestorm. Ammunition caches cooked off at random, while chemical plumes drifted toward Cheboksary. The final 52 drones simply chose whatever structures were left standing. Russia's showcase weapons plant, shielded by elite defenses, lay reduced to rubble. The Kometa line, 2 decades in development, was obliterated, requiring a full restart. Ukraine had sacrificed $68 million worth of drones for a victory worth billions, proving decisively that even a superpower's crown jewel can fall before AI-driven swarms.